Well, hello everyone. I hope that you're able to see me here and hear me. Well, at least see my screen, I should say. And welcome to the Word Show, where we talk about licensure exam preparation for helping professionals like mental health counselors, clinical social workers, and marriage and family therapists and those going for their license and going for actually to earn their license. So, anyway, welcome, and I'm glad to be back. Sorry we've had so many technical difficulties, and I'm hoping that this will mark the end of all that. My theme for 2020 is I Can See Clearly Now, and that means hopefully see clearly through to your way to pass the exam and give yourself that very special gift of licensure and the freedom that it brings. So, also seeing clearly to your future as a helping professional in your own independent practice. So, you can make your own rules and see people that you feel passionate about helping and do it in the way that you know you're best at. So, without further ado, just wanted to review some quick tips for the social work exam. I've had quite a few people taking this exam lately and quite a few struggling, and that is, I believe, because the test is incredibly difficult and I'll be honest and say often not fair. So, just wanted to put that out there and say that you all are very smart, amazing people, and I'm glad that you do what you do. And if you haven't passed the exam yet, don't be discouraged. It's just a matter of time before you do because you are good at what you do, and that will come through. So, here we go. Some things that are important to remember on the social work exam is that there are words that are almost never part of the right answer. And so never use the word never, which is ironic, but please don't use the word never because it's usually not part of the right answer. So that is one piece that's important to remember. The other is we never tell someone what to do, but we do often tell people information. So although that's splitting hairs, that's what all of this exam prep is about, is learning how to split those hairs. So since we're on the topic of splitting hairs, you can tell someone information. You can give people a pamphlet, for instance, but you never want to tell someone what to do. Okay, that is a big problem. Um, Sorry, give me 1 second. My roommate just came home, so they're always getting excited for that. All right, so back to what we're saying. We never tell someone what to do, but we do give them information. So that's just something to keep in mind. Also, we do strongly urge people in real life, but we do not strongly urge people on the exam. We never want to strongly urge people on the exam. We could encourage them, we might support them, we might redirect them, we might reflect back to them in order to encourage understanding or to clarify, but we never strongly urge. We never avoid or even attempt to avoid negative things that happen in the session. We never confront anyone. We never interrupt. We never ignore or change the subject or distract someone. We never assure someone of what others will or won't do, even if they're our colleagues or at our agency. We never assume anything except good things, like that doctors always prescribe the right medication, that the person is trying their best, which of course is usually true and usually good to assume. We never assume anything negative based on demographics or any other kinds of behavior for that matter. Only look at what is stated in the case scenario. We never blame others or say that any other professional is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. We never ask why. Never ask why. We never judge or even act in a way that might sound judgy, for lack of a better word. We should not use the phrase, of course you know, or, well, all people in this one group do this, or always do this when it comes to this age group, for instance. So anything that's all or nothing, or assuming, assumptive, presuming, or universal is not good. We never ask for evidence or ask someone to explain something. We also don't ask someone to continue to tell us why they believe something when that thing that they believe is potentially destructive or explosive or could hurt someone else in the session. We should also never continue a family session or a session when another client in the session with that person is being deliberately deceitful or destructive. We would want to end the session in that case. We never just give things time and hope that it will work itself out. We never accuse someone, we never ask if something is true, we never question, and we never ask for just the facts. We also never just hand someone a pamphlet or look something up. If we don't feel competent in an area, we don't want to just look something up and read a journal article, for instance. Okay, so those are some things we never do. Now, if you've bought my Versal computer app, then you know these synonyms because they're in flashcards, so that each of the very late letters in the mnemonic device have a flashcard or many flashcards with synonyms that stand for those words. So for validate, there are certain synonyms that are the same as seeing the word validate. Explore is another one, and those two are on this slide. Then there are synonyms for refer that are in that Versal Suite educational app, which you can purchase on my website at resolutiontoday.com under the store or products, and then under exam prep. And then we have educate, and then lay the foundation for the client to feel empowered, advocate, and treat. There's synonyms for each of these, and I will be sharing a few of them right here. So a synonym for explore is focus. That is another word for explore. So focus is another word for explore. Clarify, reflect. So the purpose of reflection is to gain a deeper understanding. Another word for explore is assess. That's a big one. Find out more, get details, or find out what their perspective is. Okay, validate also has synonyms. Some things that mean the same as validate that you should look for in the answer key are build rapport, understand their view of the problem, because that's the most essential thing for building rapport and starting work with someone. We also might offer a brief period of silence when someone is expressing a strong emotion in order to validate that it's okay to have strong emotions. We don't want to rush people or push them to talk when they're having an emotional experience. Give them some safe room. Hold that space for them. Being empathetic or offering empathy or experiencing empathy is also very much like validating. Letting them tell their story about what happened to them. That would be a very important thing right after a trauma, for instance. Let them tell their story after a trauma. Or let's say, natural disaster. It doesn't have to be a personal assault kind of trauma or abuse. Could be a natural disaster, but or a military experience or so on. So trauma is something that we normally want to let someone tell their story, and just about anything. We want to hear their perspective. Unless it says you've just finished asking them about their perspective, in which case then you would move on to explore. Another synonym for validate that I don't have on here is encourage feelings expression, or help them identify their feelings, help them recognize their feelings. Anything to do with feelings would be the same as validating. Letting them know they're normal. Telling them that their child is probably, I'm going to rephrase that. Telling someone that their child is within the normal range of development would also be validating, as long as it's true that they are, in fact, in a normal phase and they're within the normal range of development. Some synonyms for some other parts of very late is educate. So educate might also be telling someone information or offering them information, explaining something to a client. We can ask, or we can tell a client what information they might need. We can explain medical necessity. We can explain the process of abuse reporting and what to expect next. We can explain confidentiality limits. We can explain risks and benefits of counseling or of being part of a research study. We can explain normal phases of development or what to expect from a teenager. If the question asks you to clarify or help the client understand something, that's the same thing as education. You might also tell someone about services. Now that's a tricky one. That could be refer or educate. If you're telling someone about services available and how someone might be able to help them. That's somewhere between refer and educate. It's a little bit of both. And remember, anytime you have validate and explore, or refer and explore, or anytime you have two of the validate and two of the mnemonic device of any kind, then that's going to be your best answer. So 2 trumps 1. For L, we lay the foundation for the client to be able to assert themselves. So we want them to be able to assert themselves in a safe, calm, productive manner, in a healthy way. No protesting, even though we might want to or feel that we're fair in doing that. It's much better to stick with the law as it's been written and help the client navigate their way through that law, help them find an access point to those services or fill in a gap to services. But we would never want to make a person feel like they have to advocate for themselves or that they have to stand up for something in order to protect others. We want to give them choices. So we want them to assert themselves and have choices. That's the essential thing. And so you could consider it being like a liaison. Okay? Being a liaison, someone who's going to help them connect with what they need. Okay? All right. Next, I'm moving on to ethics. And these are some add-ons that have come from doing more questions myself and fine-tuning my own skills on this because I'm not perfect. And I know that staying on top of the information, continuing to take different practice exams. When I purchase these other exams, I take them when I look through the material and read through content, and when I'm teaching classes and doing training, I am always picking up on wording and things that other people have found helpful and adding them to my training with you all here. So these are some things I added. Whenever you have an ethics question, or just about any kind of question, but especially an ethics question, you want to find an answer where everyone wins, where the client has what they need and you've been able to assert your boundaries. So find the answer where you're able to have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. So ethics is the kind of question that usually starts with what would be the most important thing to do, what should you do, what would be the primary thing to do, what is really essential. That's the word I'm looking for. Essential. So anything with those words, you're going to want to, especially with those words, find an answer where everyone wins. So, for instance, if an elderly woman comes in to see you saying that her daughter's pressuring her to go to a senior living center, but she seems alert and oriented, she has case management, she has care at home helping her, and she's signed a release for her daughter to be able to talk to you, then look for an answer that involves the daughter, an awareness that the woman is competent, that she has capacity to live on her own, to make her own decisions, but one that also acknowledges the concern that her daughter has. So make sure it involves the mom's concern about not wanting to live in the senior living facility, acknowledges the daughter's concern about her mother's welfare, at the same time as also not going above and beyond your own professional boundary. So you wouldn't, for instance, offer money for the mother to be able to find a different place to live, or because that would be outside of your boundary, or talk to the daughter without a release of information, or say to the mom, well, I really think we need to involve your daughter here before we make any decisions, or why don't you go ahead and look at these options for senior living anyway, because these seem like they would be helpful for you. So we don't want to push her to make a decision other than the one she already has made, because she has self-determination, and that would be going over our boundary to pressure her to do something she doesn't want to do. So we want to honor her self-determination. We are not going to offer more than we can promise. We are not going to talk to her daughter without a release of information. In this case, we do have one. So we can talk to the daughter. So we're going to find a solution where everyone wins. So we would probably meet with the daughter and the mom together to discuss what all the options are and validate their mutual concerns. Also, in ethics, we should not allow for our supervisor to be in a role with us other than as our supervisor. So on the exam, your supervisor is not your friend. They are in an official role only as your supervisor. That's the key difference. They are only your supervisor. So you should not have a supervisor-supervisee friendship or exchange therapy. The supervisor should only be in the role as a supervisor. And that's true of any role that anyone is in these scenarios. If they're in one role, then that's the only role they're in. They're not in multiple roles. And they're always acting in an official capacity. So even if you're an ex-colleague of your supervisor, and maybe you used to be your supervisor's boss, and now you want to talk to your supervisor about something related to, I don't know, your husband, for instance, and you're having marital problems and you want to be able to talk to your former employee, right? So you swap roles and you're like, hey, I just want to talk to you. We used to be friends. We used to be colleagues. Heck, I was your boss. Let me talk to you about my husband and the trouble I've been having. No. So keep things clean. Keep things on the straight and narrow. Stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Only your lane. It's never okay to have coffee with a client. It's never okay to take food from a client, not on the exam. It's not okay to go to the same church or synagogue or mosque with a client. And here's another ethics dilemma. If a teen becomes pregnant from an adult in this scenario, an adolescent becomes pregnant and it was an adult that is the parent of the teen's baby. So they were essentially abused. They did not give consent, not legal consent. Then that means the abuse has to be reported to the parents and the abuse hotline right away. If the teenager is pregnant and it is from another child or teenager, another minor who also cannot give consent, then you can keep it confidential, at least for a little while, and you can tell the parent much later, and possibly only in a session with the adolescent there as well. So if the adolescent is there in session with the parent, then you can help tell the parent with the adolescent, with the client, but you would not go behind their back and tell their parents unless there was abuse, meaning a teenager or a child who was engaged in sexual activity by an adult, or any other kind of abuse situation, threats, bribery, violence, so on. Okay, now when we assess, this is just another tip, these are just random tips. When we assess, so we've done our validate, we looked for that in the answer key, we don't see any validate. We move on to explore, and we want to know, okay, what is going on here for this client? The word might say assess. If it says assess, then usually the most important thing to assess for, in case they ask, is to assess for the severity and frequency of symptoms. That's usually what we're going to assess for, especially when you're diagnosing. You want to assess for the severity and frequency of symptoms. So how bad and when. It might also say, what's the impact been of this problem? So impact is another word for severity and frequency. And sometimes you're in kind of a bit of an ironic world where you are assessing the need to do an assessment. So, for example, a scenario that says a parent comes in to see you and they believe that their child may be having a neurodevelopmental problem because they are not speaking yet and they are 2 years old. And so they want to know, what do I do? Your best response, your first response, your next response, the primary thing to do would be to think to yourself, assess to yourself, is this client's child within the normal range of development, quote unquote normal range of development, according to theories by Piaget, Erikson, okay? Those are the primary ones that we go to for development questions. Piaget, who was what? Brain development, yes. All about learning and brain development. Sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, formal operational, intuitive, all of those stages. So you're going to think, is the client's child in a normal range of development according to Piaget? Okay, if so, good. Then think to yourself, are they in the normal range of development according to Erik Erikson? Okay, sure. Let's say they are 2 and they are now in, let's think, I'm giving you a moment to think to yourself. Erikson said that when Humans are in stage what? They are 2 years old. In what stage? Bing, bing, bing. They are in autonomy versus shame. Autonomy versus shame. So, if the parent says, my child is not potty training as early as my other child, I think there's something wrong. Then you would say to yourself, but wait a minute, they're in a stage of Freud, psychosocial stages of development, and Freud said that at 2, they are still learning to potty train. That's the 2 to 4. So that's where Freud might come in. So Erikson's good for the cradle to grave, birth till death kinds of questions. And Erikson's also about psychosocial crises and psychosocial development. So he's about psychosocial crises and stages of development. Freud is psychosexual stages, and remember the mnemonic device for Freud is Orphan Annie, pretty little girl. That's the oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency stage, and genital stage, where we're all doomed forever to be caught up in psychosexual stressors. A little bit of Freudian humor there. Anywho, so if they are within a normal range, this is my long way of saying, if they're within a normal range, then we should not send them for a further assessment. So if there's a question of normalcy when it comes to developmental stages, assess by looking at these stages, and then if they're within a normal range, you do not need to do an assessment. Not. No. Just normalize and tell the parent that it's normal to be concerned, but they're probably okay. But say it a little nicer than that, because usually the phrasing is a little nicer than that. All right, next. I think we already did this one. We already did that one. Okay, I think that's it. Let me just make sure. All this material can be bought from me on my website. It can also be accessed when you purchase the 5-hour workshop, which is usually the 4th Saturday of every month for social work and the 4th Sunday of every month for MHC and the 4th Friday of every month for marriage and family therapy. And this is about substances. I think we already did that. Psychotropics, yes. All right, good. I think we're all good for now. And remember your study plan. Take my 5-hour workshop with the home study material. That includes a computer app that has flashcards that support everything you've been learning tonight, and then some, then a lot. And it also includes 2 major social work tests. Also, take 10 questions a day from the phone app that's available at the Apple Store and at Google Play. And do that for 30 days. That will equal 300 questions. And that will get you a little bit more endurance for the 170 question test that you'll be taking over the 4 hours of your exam. And obviously, if you take 300 questions and you still have time left over in that 4-hour time period, then you know you're in good shape to take the exam for real. And then take 2 sections of studying each week from my packet. Test to see how you did. Test to see in one sitting whether you got it done in 4 hours. And if not, then do it again and do it faster. If you can. It's not easy, I know. And you also have an opportunity to take advantage of my tutoring services. There's a sale going on right now where you can get 2 tutoring sessions for $100. Please take advantage of that. It's good to have one-on-one help because there may be things that, just, I don't know, maybe I talk too fast sometimes and you just want to hear me repeat something, or you have a question that's particular to a special learning need that you might have, or you want to know a different kind of mnemonic device. Maybe you're a visual learner and you need something more to be visual in order to remember it, or maybe you're an auditory learner, or you need a different kind of example. So with that, then I can tailor it more to you and we can find out what you need to succeed. And also 5 minutes of visualization of success every day on your way to the exam. So thank you for being here for our show, and I will plan to be back on again next week. We're going to do mental health counseling, and I will be posting a recording of more material. So please subscribe so it will make it to you and you won't miss a thing. And hit the subscribe button above my channel. And I really do appreciate you coming to join us. So this has been Dr. Rachel Haskell from The Word, signing out. Thank you. Bye-bye.